Safety Committee for Monday, July 18th, 2022 to order. The first order of business on our agenda is to approve two sets of meeting minutes, June 14th and June 20th. Any revisions or corrections to the minutes necessary? If there are none, I'll take a motion to approve both sets of minutes. Motion by Dinny, is there a second? Second by Larson. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None are opposed. The minutes are approved. Item number 2 is consider approval or denial of various license applications. And you have that batch of those in front of you for this month. There are no recommended denials. There are a couple things of note. In with the batch this month is a Class A beer license for a new business, Modern Gents of Wasa Incorporated. It is a barbershop and men's spa. I believe the proposed owner and the landlord are both here. Class A beer is actually a retail license, much like we give to grocery stores and convenience stores. And within the confines of that license, it does allow them to offer limited samples, 3 ounces or less, during certain hours of the day. And so that's what they're asking for. They're not asking for the full Class B beer, liquor, restaurant license type thing. They're asking for this permission to give these samples to people when they have them on premises. So that is in your packet. Does anyone have questions either for the owner or the landlord on that before we get further into the packet? Go ahead, Doug. Oh, yes, that's what we have these little postcards for. Okay.
I do have a question. Do we want to talk about it specifically, or just you want a motion?
Well, it's in with the batch, so if you
Okay.
have questions, now would be the time to iron them out, and then we'll either approve or deny the whole group. So go ahead with your questions.
So the landlord is here and he's good with the plan?
Yep, why don't we bring the landlord up? Mark Craig, Compass Properties is the landlord. And Mark, if you want to come up and talk about the plan a little bit, I think you've been working with the owner.
Jose Seve
Yep.
Fuste has been trying to get a men's barbershop spa open for many years, actually. And we looked at the Calgary location, looked at other locations, and he's opening in the west wing of Washington Square on Washington Street. And it brings that high-end feel, and it's something that I think we should support as a community and attract that level, that caliber of a tenant to our community and our downtown. And I think it'd be very helpful for him to be able to offer that as part of the services that he does at the spa. So I hope you support it.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions? If not, we'll leave that one in the batch yet. And then we've got one other. So item number 3 on the summary was a Class B beer and liquor application for Thirsties on 3rd LLC. Nathan Waller doing business as Thirsties on 3rd. This was formerly Rock's Place at 810 South 3rd Avenue. The Liquor License Review Subcommittee immediately prior to this meeting met with the proposed owner and discussed the plan of operation. And at this time, the subcommittee is not recommending a license for that establishment. And so nothing passed in the subcommittee, so there is nothing for us to act upon this evening. So that item will be withdrawn from the batch. So along with your approvals and denials, we'll strike from the packet any reference to Thirsties on 3rd because that did not clear the subcommittee. Other than that, it's a standard slate of renewals and events. So absent any additional questions or concerns, go ahead, Lou.
Maybe this is not the right time to address this, but this memo on jalapenos, are we going to be discussing that as well?
That's separate, actually, because
Okay.
we're going to talk about a hardship issuance for him. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Separate. Okay, so with that, I'll take a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff.
I move to approve the various license applications as
Okay.
listed.
All right, we've got a
Second.
motion from Denny, second from Larson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, so those carry. And that includes the recommendation for Modern Gents, so thank you, gentlemen, for coming in. Okay. Separate from that, we have item number 3, consider for waiver of Wasa Municipal Code Section 3.06.010, Sub A, payment of taxes, claims, forfeitures, and judgments prior to issuance of a license due to extraordinary financial hardship. And the petitioner for that is Jalapenos of Wasa. So we are taking this one as a separate item. And so you did see, I believe, some write-up in the packet from the clerk's office. At this point, there is some unpaid balance for Jalapenos. However, he has made a partial payment towards the amount owed and is working to come up with the rest of the amount owed. And in the past, we actually have seen this similar type of process. You may recall that we did it with the labor temple. Obviously, people can't pay their debts if they're not open, but it's difficult for them to be open and operate properly if they don't have a license. So it's kind of gets to be a chicken and an egg conundrum. And so this is the same situation with Jalapenos. Post-COVID, they are still struggling. And so that's what we're seeing, I think, with his request. Separate from that, though, in addition to those struggles, also you'll see in the last month or so has now well exceeded 100 demerit points because there's been a couple of events that have happened there. So that's why I have this one as a separate item that we need to talk about. For now, he's on a provisional license to allow him to operate in between the expiration of his license on July 1st and this meeting. And so do we have the owner of Jalapenos with us? Come on up, sir. Okay. I'm going to just switch in the packet. Okay. And so, talk to us a little bit, I guess, about your plan to satisfy the amount that's owed that you're currently in arrears on with the city. I know that it looked like you had made a $3,000 payment. How long do you figure it will take to clear the rest of it? Because obviously the license is for a year.
I'm planning in no longer than 6 months, and I'll be able to pay the rest. Longer if possible, but not 6 months. I can do that.
Okay. And with regard to the specific obligation, I guess in terms of business volume, now, I would say, I want to say post-COVID, but it feels like it's circling back around again and we're still in it. So, I guess business-wise, have you experienced increased volume? I mean, are you operating well enough now that you'll generate enough proceeds to be able to clear the debt?
Yeah, post-COVID, everything it got really hard. All across the table, revenue, even being able to hire employees, everything was so hard. In the last months, I can see things getting better. I've been able to hire more people that are staying, and everything's coming back to normal a little bit at a time. I can see it slowly increase, but a constant increase and everything. So I'm confident that things are looking up, and this is why I asking for seeking for this help, because I'm foreseeing a better time for us in downtown, and I think the worst is, I like to think it's over, and it's just up to me and my team to turn around the things, and I would just I would have hated if I don't have my liquor license to allow me to keep working on it.
Would you mind if I say a couple words?
You certainly can.
I've known Pedro for several years, and of all the restaurants that sought relief during COVID, Pedro was not able to receive any. And I can tell you, this man works incredibly hard, and I, as a human being, he's an incredible guy, and I hope you guys can give him a little relief. He's working hard to dig himself out of a pretty big hole, and I think it's worthy of that effort, and I hope you support that.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Just for the record,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Craig is the landlord at Jalapenos as well. With that, we're in a little bit of a unique circumstance here with your business because absent this request, had this request not even happened at this meeting or the next one, we would likely be summoning you for a formal expression of concern over the points on the license based on the things that have happened. And it looks like, according to the reports, between January and June of this year, on a couple specific nights, things got pretty interesting over there. And so had this been a formal expression of concern, the one thing that I would caution you on so that we can ensure due process is that if we talk about, in this committee, if we talk about the specifics of those things, all of those things, if there's ever a hearing for suspension or revocation on the license, those things could become evidence. And so before we tread down that conversation, I need you to understand that and decide if you're willing to talk about those things with us as a committee. But I think that before we make a decision, that subject can't go, I mean, we can't ignore that, because then, we could end up back here for a formal expression of concern if things don't improve. So, I mean, are you willing to talk about January and June with us?
Absolutely. I can tell you, and after COVID, I lost a lot of my team members that was helping me run the business. In that time, I had to learn so many things from running the restaurant, what happened, and running the office, payment, stuff like that. And also, I've been learning a lot how to run the night weekends, and I've been making a lot of changes based on what's been happening. And yeah, I'm more than willing to talk with whoever it takes to solve this problem.
I guess the concern I have is that what we saw on a couple of those occasions was that some of the points are for serving underage. And I know in one of the reports, it specifically referenced the fact that you were short on security on a particular night, which completely can happen to anybody. But I guess talk to me a little bit about, or us a little bit about, where you're at in your management plan, given that you've now had to take over basically every facet of this business to ensure that that type of thing doesn't keep happening. I mean, there's been situation where officers that responded to situations outside felt that the place was open after hours and had, patrons in there longer than they should have. Bar time is bar time. And then also open container on the street, and that container happened to be in the possession of a 19-year-old person. So, I guess I need to know, or we need to know, as a manager and as the owner, what steps are you taking to curb that trend?
After those events happened, I was embarrassed as far as a little bit upset with my staff. What I did, I had to let some people go that were partially responsible for that, and been hiring more people. And again, it's really hard to hire in these times. As far as the bouncers, there's only one person that has been sticking around and help me out. The rest of them are just not reliable. And what I'm doing is, I've been staying since that happened. I've been staying every single week there at the door and inside, making sure that those things doesn't happen. And just not to go too far, this Saturday, I was there at the door watching everybody. And some people were upset with me because I didn't let them in because they didn't have an ID, and one was a minor. So what I'm doing is the steps I'm taking right away is me staying there and making sure myself that things are been respecting the rules and making sure that everything is okay and safe. And some officers been stopping by at the end of the night, and I've been thanking them and appreciating their presence there, which is helping me a lot to keep everybody in order. But next steps is I keep offering the job to bouncer to more people. I need more people there to making sure that every corner, every aspect is being watched closely.
Sure.
And it's right now it's me who is staying there every night.
Okay. One thing that has assisted other establishments that really have had some of these same experiences a couple have posted signage inside near the exit saying no open containers beyond this point. Is that something that you either have done or are considering doing? I mean, I can think of at least 3 that had to do that because they had trouble with containers walking outside. People would want to go outside and smoke and not leave their drink behind, and so next thing you know, their stuff is out on the sidewalk. So
We have a sign, and also like I said, the only person that is working is a bouncer there with me regularly, and myself. We don't let anybody walk out with containers. Sometimes what happens is some people walk from other places carrying beverage, and they just left it outside. And that happened this Saturday. Somebody walked in carrying a bottle and left it on one of my tables. So
Okay.
I right away had to go and pick it by myself and throw it away.
Well, the one of these situations that was outlined in our report said that the person that, when they were contacted, identified that they had purchased the item from you, or from your place.
And yeah, that time that might happen. I'm full aware of those things been happening. That's why I have to make myself stay every Saturday to train and re-educate my whole staff. Last incident that happened, one of the officers recommend having a meeting with all my staff and him, and I was more than willing to do that. However, all the staff that I had there, after reviewing what happened, I had to let them go.
Okay, so you're in the process really of replacing a bunch of those same people?
Yes, and actually everybody is new. And the people that used to work back then, they don't work with me anymore.
Well, and that's the best time to train. So as you're starting to staff up, you know, if you need that, I mean, not that the police department specializes in the bar security business, but they are happy to meet with you and your people to help recognize not only fake IDs, but when things are getting out of hand and, you know, when to call. And, you know, sooner is usually better, you know, before things get out of hand. So, you know, I would say utilize them as a resource. I guess, Chief, do you have anything to say about some of this training that, I mean, if there's a bunch of newer people?
Yeah, absolutely. So the incident back in January, just to remind the committee, this was an incident where there were 13 people in the bar at 5 o'clock in the morning. There were underage people there. We issued demerit points for serving underage people, for having underage people on a premises, and for being open after hours, and that was 75 demerit points. And that was, the impetus for that was a call from somebody who came across a 16 or 17-year-old child who was drunk and who had been in the bar, was afraid to go home because parents would be mad. So instead of going home, they were trying to find someplace warm, and it was 4 below zero. So it was a pretty serious situation. There was a lot of people in the bar at 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was a pretty significant violation. So Lieutenant Felder reached out and went to Jalapenos, had a conversation with them, spoke about the demerit point system, what's required within the demerit point system, how that works within the Public Health and Safety Committee, offered to come in and help train staff, you know, on when to call police and how to ID and those kinds of things, and they didn't take advantage of that. So we're always willing to do that. We offer that to any establishment that's new, any establishment that's existing, and definitely we offer that to taverns who are having struggles with their staff and knowing what the rules are and following those rules. And then most recently, just a few weeks ago, we were there, and it was kind of similar to what happened in January in that people were there after hours. It was the impetus for it was an underage drinking violation, and we went downstairs and there were underage people there. There was one person who was the security manager who said that they just weren't able to keep up with everything that night. So they issued some citations. We again issued 100 demerit points this time for being open after hours, for allowing people to leave with an open container, and on serving underage people. So, you know, it's kind of more of the same of what we've seen from Jalapenos. And I guess my thought would be that, you know, knowing that this hearing and this request was pending, you know, as a bar owner, I would be as careful as I could to follow all the rules and regulations within our ordinances, and that didn't happen. So.
Well, the other question I have, and I think I had read in one of the reports, was that it appears that most of the operation is now taking place in the lower level.
Yes.
And not on the upper level. So that really, I think, creates some difficulty for law enforcement to figure out when you're open and when there's people in there, because you can't see in the windows. And so, you know, at what point is the upstairs even open or being reopened, or what's happening with, which is the 3rd Street entry points?
The upstairs has been modified for a different, it's more like a dessert bar, and that's why it's not being used for the bar and the weekends.
Okay. Okay. Committee members, any questions at all regarding Jalapenos or their operations? I mean, obviously, it's our goal to, you know, help businesses be successful, but we have a decision to make here as well. Anybody?
I would move that we approve the waiver
Okay.
at this time. This doesn't constitute the formal
Nope.
expression of concern, so really it's
No, and if
not
stuff keeps
germane.
happening, that absolutely can happen here. So as a committee, you guys can decide that you want to summon the owner back. So, if things don't improve, you can summon the owner back, and we can do a formal expression of concern. And at that point, we would be looking for a serious plan from management to, cut down the things that we've been seeing. So it doesn't have to be part of your motion, you're right.
If I
Go ahead.
may say something, I just want to reassure that, as I was saying, I've been learning from many mistakes that I have made in my team, and I do take full responsibility for everything that happened because it's my responsibility, and I'm doing everything I can to improve the situations, train people, educate them how run a bar successfully, and in that way, like I said, I've been staying myself every Saturday, and I will continue to do so until I'm confident that I have a strong team that help me to eliminate all these things to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Is the weekend typically when you have the problems? Is it Friday and Saturday is often the problem?
I don't do Fridays anymore, just Saturdays.
Okay,
And one of the reasons I decided to do it downstairs is because I thought I have better control on keeping the underage thing, people coming in. I guess I only have one entrance, and I can focus my attention in that entrance instead of two. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to do it downstairs. And I was confused on the date that you said it happened the last time, but I've been watching really close the main entrance, making sure that nobody goes in that is underage or with any ID. So what I'm trying to say is I'm working towards improving all those situations. But yes, I'm more than willing to sit with anybody so they can train me to help train my whole staff.
okay. Alder Dinney was he made a motion to approve the waiver. Is there a second for his motion?
I will second that.
Okay, we have a second from Larson. We're going to go ahead and vote on the waiver. That then will allow us to renew your license. So you do believe that you will be able to clear that balance within 6 months?
I committed that, yes.
Okay, and so when we get to the next renewal, which is June 30th of 2023, you shouldn't have any outstanding debt for the city? Is
I
that
will not.
correct? Okay. Okay. All right, so with a motion on the floor then, members in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None are opposed, so that motion carries. So we will grant the waiver and renew the license.
Lisa,
Yes,
just for the record, the renewal was already approved. It's just been put on hold by the
right.
clerk's office.
So
But
that allows you to release the renewal, though, is what I'm
Correct.
saying. Okay. All right, so that will allow Mary to release your license to you. That license is in effect for a year, so, I would say take advantage of the chief's offer to get your new people trained. And, just make sure that everyone is clear that, at least from this committee, bar time is bar time. So whatever, closing time is for the night, they need to close up, and it doesn't matter how much fun people are having, they need to go. So, don't let it get to be 3 and 5 a.m. and then there's still, 10 people in there, so. Okay, so with that, we have taken voting action on that item, so that item is complete.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
everyone.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. Let's see, item number 4, our next item is a hearing. That hearing, the petitioner for that is Aaron Adams, owner of an animal, on appeal of a dangerous animal declaration that was dated July 1st of 2022 of her dog Hank. So we'll go ahead and conduct the hearing, and then we will deliberate on the hearing in closed session. With that, Ms. Adams, are you here this evening? Okay, so if you guys want to come up, did you bring other witnesses with you who wish to offer testimony beyond yourselves?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so you can have your witnesses come up as well. We're going to swear all the witnesses in at once. On behalf of the city attorney's office, does the city have witnesses to testify tonight as well, or no?
It is not me putting on the
Okay.
PD.
Okay. Okay, and so Lieutenant Pauls and Officer Bishop, do you have witnesses other than yourselves to offer testimony?
Yes.
Okay, so any witnesses that are going to offer testimony tonight, including yourselves, come up to the front. The clerk will swear you all in as a group. And then you guys can sit in the first row or two here, and we'll call you as needed.
We need to move over?
Okay, no, yep, just kind of make room for everybody. And okay, clerk will swear you all in together.
Now raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, I do.
Each one of you, please state your name into the microphone so that we know who was sworn in.
I'm Erin Adams. I'm Susan Adams. Kate Wasa. Samantha McBride. Ashley Bishop. Melinda Pauls.
Mayor, you've administered the oath? Okay. So then let the record show all witnesses have been sworn. We'll convene the hearing. This is a dangerous animal hearing pursuant to Chapter 8 of the Wausau Municipal Code. A dangerous dog order has been served against you and your animal was declared dangerous by the chief of police or his designee. Let it be noted for the record that the following Public Health and Safety Committee members are present: Doug Dinney, Lou Larson, Chad Hankey, and Lisa Rasmussen. Alder Becky McElhaney has been excused for this evening. With regard to the documents associated with this hearing, let's confirm, Ms. Adams, you've received copies of the documents associated with this hearing? The notice, the declaration, the redacted police reports, you've received those documents? I believe they were emailed to you, okay? We'll certify receipt of those. And so the four members of the committee are present, along with our counsel, Nathan Miller. Humane Officer Bishop, would you state the other appearances on behalf of the city?
I have Samantha McBride here. She is the mother of the victim.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Lisa Rasmussen, Chairperson of the Public Health and Safety Committee for the City of Wausau. Ms. Adams, a dangerous dog order has been filed against you, the facts of which resulted in a declaration by the Chief of Police was found in the police report, which was emailed to you along with this hearing. You've confirmed receipt of those documents. This hearing has been convened for the purpose of determining whether any of the facts in the declaration are true and to either uphold or deny this dangerous dog declaration. This committee will examine all evidence concerning these facts through inquiry to both sides. The committee will evaluate and then impartially weigh the evidence. It will determine whether or not it agrees with the declaration from the police chief. This hearing is open to the public. The proceeding is being recorded, and this is an informal review hearing, so it does allow you to present evidence as to why your animal should not be declared dangerous. Since this is an informal review hearing, there will not be a lot of rules as far as what information or evidence will be allowed, as long as it's all relevant. In this case, the only requirement is that the testimony is relevant and not necessarily redundant. Examples of evidence that are not relevant is that the animal is generally good, that it's been a long time since an incident occurred, that the animal does or doesn't have a license, things like that that are largely immaterial. But the material facts to what took place on the day of the incident, and if there's other related incidents, look like there's been multiple incidents with Hank here. That evidence is all admissible, both from the city side and then evidence you wish to offer is admissible as well. Things that are relevant, if the animal was being antagonized, hit, or teased, obviously that type of stuff is relevant. And you are here pro se to represent yourself. Humane Officer Bishop will present the case to the committee on the city's behalf, and Nathan Miller actually is present to serve as a legal advisor to this committee, but he is not the attorney that is presenting the case. So you may present your evidence, you may call and examine witnesses and cross-examine witnesses that have been presented against you. All witnesses have been sworn, so that testimony is given under oath. Subject to a motion for consideration by the full committee, made by a member of the committee, I will rule upon all questions, objections, and motions to procedural manners, admissibility of evidence, and similar issues as the chair. All objections, questions, and motions should be directed to me. Evidence shall be admitted which has reasonable probative value. Like I said, we will try to avoid repetitious and irrelevant testimony. If there's physical evidence exhibits, we'll accept those up here and label them. So if you have photographs, we already accept as part of the hearing today the documents that you've been served that have been filed by the city in terms of police reports and, their evidentiary reports. And so we've got that taken care of. And so the city goes first in presenting the information it has. You will then have the opportunity to present your side of the case and relevant information. Ms. Bishop, if you want to go ahead and present your case as to the declaration.
I received a report on June 27th from Officer Michael Horish with regards to a bite. The bite had occurred on June 17th, and in his report, he indicated that he spoke with several parties within both the victim's home and the mother of the owner of the dog. Her name's Susan. It'll be a whole lot easier than trying to get that out. During his initial investigation, Officer Horish had determined that this was not Hank's first bite. The victim's mother told Officer Horish that her husband had been bit by the dog previously. He had snapped at her just in weeks prior, and last year they felt that the dog had bit their, at the time, 2-year-old child. So at that point, Officer Horish went and spoke with Susan, who is the next door neighbor to the victims. And at that time, Susan had told Officer Horish that Hank does not reside in the city of Wasa. He does reside in Marshfield, but that, and that's with Aaron. And that he had a previous bite history also in Marshfield, but again, none of that had been relayed information to the health departments or law enforcement in either jurisdiction. Samantha McBride had decided that at this point there was 3 bites to her family, 1 possible bite. It was time to notify law enforcement. She was also made aware of the previous bites in Marshfield by the owner and her mother. So after reviewing the entire case and the information, it was determined that we would declare Hank a dangerous animal. We were able to review the photographs of the bite to the child, which was to his pectoral area. When Officer Horish originally was on scene, this was 3 days after the initial bite, and the child is still complaining of pain at the site. So he had photographs of that. I know we couldn't provide those because he was a minor, if I...
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Yep. So at that point, I had actually received a phone call from Samantha, and she wanted to ask, what kind of the procedure was going to be and what was going to be done. And I explained that, we have this opportunity for a dangerous animal declaration. And I asked some further questions regarding the bite on the 17th specifically. On the 17th, Samantha said that she was sitting next to Susan. They were good friends, good neighbors. She is sitting next to Susan. Susan had Hank on a leash, and her son was coming towards her. And at that point, while her son was coming towards her, it was undetermined whether or not her son was on her property or Susan's property. They've kind of got this grassy area that separates the 2 properties, and it's undetermined whose is whose, and they kind of just shared the area commonly.
Okay.
Hank jumped up and bit her son. And I said, well, what was kind of the reaction of the dog? Was it just a 1 bite and done? And she said, no. At one point, Susan had to pull Hank up by his collar to try to get him off of her son before he would stop biting. We discussed some of the previous bites where her husband was bit. She was not around, but her statement from her husband's recollection was that, he was outside at night and walking in his own yard, and Hank was outside on a leash, and he was able to bite him at that time. Unfortunately, she was not able to find photographs of that, so I don't have that information. But Samantha's other concern was she actually runs a daycare out of her home as well. And Hank regularly comes to the area and visits with Susan. Aaron is typically there with her. Because of the uniqueness of the situation, with having Hank not actually being from this area, but coming regularly and staying for days at a time, Captain Pauls and I decided that we would issue a dangerous dog declaration to Susan as the caregiver of the dog, and then equally so to Aaron as the owner of the dog. We're not going to require the outdoor kennel and fencing because it is limited time here, but the other requirements that he be on a leash and muzzled, the insurance policy, he was already neutered and microchipped, so that was already completed. Those things were still going to be required. So I brought the paperwork to Susan on July 1st and delivered the paperwork to her, and we discussed the situation. And I was actually kind of hoping that maybe Erin would have been there, just being a holiday weekend, and she was not. So we discussed the situation, and I asked Susan whether or not, what Hank's history was in Marshfield. And Susan proceeded to tell me that she did not know of any other bites, and that Hank's not her dog, and she wasn't aware of anything. She told me that she was actually on her way when I showed up to go to Aaron's house and offered to take the paperwork on Aaron's behalf and deliver it to her. So I told her that, Aaron was welcome to call me with any questions she had, that we can go over any of the requirements and anything, because Susan had mentioned that at the point where I was at Susan's house, I was actually going to go back to the office and call Aaron to notify her. Aaron was actually working. So I told her that when Aaron had time with her busy work schedule, because she works 12-hour days, to have her call me. When I returned to the office on the 5th, I had received a phone call from Aaron. She was very upset with the situation. She asked a lot of questions about the different things that were going to be required. At the end, even asked whether or not, if Hank, because his veterinary clinic is here in Wasa, if when Hank comes to the vet clinic, whether or not he had to have everything, including the insurance policy, done. And I said, no, as long as he has his leash and muzzle, goes into the car and goes back home to Marshfield, it was not required. So I did my best to answer the questions that Aaron had, to include requesting how to appeal the process. And I asked Aaron whether or not she wanted to discuss any of the situations about the other bites or even the one on that day. And Aaron did not wish to discuss the one involving Samantha's husband. However, she did want to talk about the one last year involving the 2-year-old. According to Aaron, that day they were having a gathering. It was dark outside. Hank was on a leash, and he was sitting on Aaron's feet. And next thing they know, nobody was necessarily noticing where the child necessarily was or whether or not by the dog. They just heard the child crying, and he was taken inside, and he was seen to have a scratch on his leg. Aaron explained that, there's other dogs outside, that there was toys and numerous things that could have happened. And I explained to Aaron that ultimately, whether or not that one was a bite, we were also addressing the most recent bite here on June 17th, where the dog was on a leash and still was able to bite a child. At that point, I actually got a phone call from Samantha on the same day, I believe it was, and Samantha wanted to know kind of what, was going to go into the report. I didn't have my report finished yet. And I had asked her further questions regarding the incident with her 2-year-old, because he was 2. And I asked about whether or not he was able to actually clearly articulate that it was a dog bite and it was specifically from Hank. And she said yes, that he was able to do that, and that Aaron had actually made the statement, let's see here, I'm just referencing my report that you guys all have, but that Aaron made the statement, and I quote, "that son of a bitch." And Aaron had also stated to Samantha that she had heard a dog growl but didn't think anything of it. So, and that was a little bit more when I spoke to Samantha regarding where her son was on the 17th, and I had her recount for me again the fact that they had to basically pull the dog off, have the dog hanging up by his collar at the hands of Susan, and that it was a pretty significant situation.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions at all for Officer Bishop about her reports or about the accounting that she has offered to date? Okay.
I do have a question.
Go
So
ahead.
the initial report was on the 20th and the incident was on the 17th?
Correct.
Okay. Nathan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few.
Go ahead.
To follow up with Alderperson Denny's question, so there was a 3-day wait. Do you know why there was a 3-day wait?
I do not.
Okay. And then previously you said that the dog comes regularly to Wausau. Did you ever, I guess, talk with either Susan or Aaron about what regularly means, or do you have a more definite definition of that?
I was told that typically over the weekends, every couple of weeks.
Okay. Okay. When you talked to Erin about the bite that the husband sustained, and she said, or you said that she did not want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did she not want to talk about it? But was she aware that there was a bite, or she just didn't want to talk about it because she didn't know about the bite? What can you, I guess, elaborate more on that?
So I had offered up, would you like to discuss the bite to Tanner? To which she said something to the effect of, no, I don't even want to discuss it.
Okay. And then at any time, did you ever talk to the veterinary clinic that?
I did, thank you. Forgot that piece. I did call the vet clinic, and that's standard that I call and see if they have any records or what they call red flags in the reports. They didn't have a red flag for Hank. He was fine at the clinic. However, they did have in records that Aaron has made statements that Hank is trying to bite everyone and that he has some behavioral issues. And they responded with offering some training options and telling her that she should seek a trainer, potentially even recording some of the behaviors so that she could later take them to the behaviorist and have it evaluated.
I have no other questions.
Okay. All right. And so with regard to your witness testimony, do you want to call
Yeah.
Ms. McBride up?
Yes,
You can go ahead and do that.
She's also got some photos. I don't know if because it's her own child, if she can share those, if that
I believe
changes.
she can. We just didn't publish them in a public packet, correct?
Yes, so due to the minor age of the child, we did not even post redacted photos, but as the mother of the child, if she would want to, I guess, waive that or even hide his face for, because I mean, like we said, the recording is being recorded.
Sure.
So it's up to the mother, Miss McBride, of what she, I guess, would want to do with the showing of the photos.
Yeah, because I have.
We can pass the photos also. A lot of times what we'll do is just each take a look at them, and then they don't have to necessarily be on camera.
Yeah, and if I can like use a business card to cover up a face, if there's no faces, okay.
I don't have a printed picture of right after it happened, but I do on my phone. Do you want that passed around at all?
You can bring the photo up and just show it to each of us if you like, yes. You're welcome to do that.
And then after we do show these, we should then show Miss Adams what is being
Yes.
shown. So I'm holding the two photos right now, and then I'll keep passing them.
Okay.
So I'm looking at here the driveway with the camper.
Yes.
Is this your driveway?
Yeah, so that's my driveway, and we've never had it surveyed, but we know we have at least a couple feet to the north in that boulevard area, and then Susan owns a couple feet, and that's her side door.
Okay, so
To
her
the
house is
north.
to the right, looking at
Yeah,
this photo.
correct, yep.
Okay, just so we know what we're looking
Yeah.
at. Okay.
Samantha, if I may ask you a question.
Yes.
This is my first hearing, and I'm new at this game here, but you called me on this. Is this correct?
I did, correct, yes.
Okay,
Because
thank
when
you.
I had talked to Officer Bishop, I was just foggy, and I thought she had said that it was the aldermans that decided or whatnot. So, and that's why I had called you, because I was like, if there's someone I can talk to,
Okay,
you'd
thank
be the
you.
man. So, yes, that was me.
Okay.
And then, whenever you're ready, I have something to read. Just let
Okay.
me know.
The pictures are just making their way around, and then they'll take them over and show them to Susan and Aaron so they can see what evidence has been presented as
And
well.
then also, my husband is here, so he can talk about the bite that occurred to him if need be or
Okay.
whatever. So,
We would have to swear him in under oath, but we certainly could accept that testimony as relevant since we're looking at a pattern of behavior.
okay.
So, does anyone have questions for Ms. McBride at all? And Nathan, do you have questions for Ms. McBride at all, beyond the ones that you asked about the photos? Okay. Go ahead.
All right, how often would you say that Hank is at Susan's?
So it's hard to say because they come and go. I mean, it all depends on like events, holidays, things like that. I would say at least one weekend a month,
Okay.
at least.
And so I asked Humane Officer Bishop why there was a 3-day wait, and she did not know. Can you elaborate on
Yep, so
why?
I actually have that here in my letter. So I guess, do you want me to read this and then we can do questions off of that?
I'd rather you not read. If you could, I guess, testify from memory. You can use
Yeah.
it to like refresh your
So the
recollection.
reason why we had waited 3 days is because there had been multiple bites before, and we were very close with them.
It's okay. Take your time.
We have no family or friends in the area, so to us, this was like a mother to me. This was my boy's grandma. So we didn't want to report because we didn't want to get them in trouble, and we don't want any issues because we do live so close, and we were so close and whatnot. So it took the whole weekend to really think about it, and after thinking about it, it wasn't fair to our kids, and it's not fair to the next person that gets bit if we don't report. So we felt it needed to be reported because it's a reoccurring issue. And truthfully, if it would have moved a little bit, it could have killed my son. And my... it could have punctured his lungs. My infant was directly at Susan's feet. If he would have moved the wrong way, made a weird noise, my infant could have been the one attacked, and he could be dead as well. So, I don't want this to happen again.
Understandable. Additional questions?
Yeah. So then we had heard of the not bite, but that involved you.
Yeah.
Can you, I guess, talk more about that as well?
Yeah, so we were like at the end of my drive, right in that boulevard area, and we were all just kind of standing around talking. And I had bent down to pet Susan's dog, Shirley. And as I bent down, Hank had lunged at my face, and thankfully I had caught it at the right time that he was doing that, and I had backed up. And that's not his normal behavior, so I was not expecting that. So after that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just cut this short and go back in my yard. But thankfully I had caught in it, or I would have been bit directly in the face.
And he was on a leash at that time?
Correct. During all of these incidents, he was leashed.
And was Susan holding the leash during this time with
I believe
you?
Aaron was.
Okay. Was there any reaction from Aaron after this?
I believe it was the typical, "What the hell, you son of a bitch?" That seems to be the common saying, that he's a sorry son of a bitch, or, and normally they hit him in the face or whatever.
Okay. And this just happened, your incident was when?
It was anywhere from like a couple weeks to like a month or so before this bite with my son.
And then the incident involving your husband
That was around November.
of 2021?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, because he was actually outside putting up Christmas lights. So,
And so then I've gathered you have 2 children?
3.
3 children? Okay, so we have the one that's the most recent.
He's our oldest.
Okay, and then you have the 2-year-old.
Yep.
Okay.
And then a 1-year-old.
Can you describe the 2-year-old incident and when that happened?
So I don't recall when it was. I think they had mentioned that it was during her husband's celebration of life. Afterwards, we came back to her house and had a fire. And so we were all kind of sitting outside, and we were around the fire, and my son was playing behind us. And I just remember the dog growling, and I didn't think much of it. And he came up crying, and we were all frantic, like, what's the matter? What's going on? And I think he kept saying, like, the dog or something like that. And then we went in the house to figure out, like, why is my kid so upset? Because we couldn't calm him down. And that's when he had said the dog bit him. And then I think Aaron and I, or maybe me, Aaron, Sue, whatever, had talked about it. And at that point, we had determined that that's what occurred because they had seen the dog bite on his ankle. And she just knew his behavior and assumed that that was a dog bite.
Do you have any photos of that?
I do not.
Okay. And you have no photos of the husband's bite?
I do not.
Okay.
I have no more questions.
Okay. All right. Committee members, any questions for Ms. McBride? If not, you can go ahead and be seated. Officer Bishop, do you have additional witnesses that you wish to offer testimony? Okay. And so, committee, do you wish to hear testimony from Mr. McBride? If so, we'll swear him in and he can offer testimony. If not, based on what you've seen and read in the police reports and heard here, you would not have to take that testimony? Okay. Committee members are indicating that they're good without that additional witness testimony. And so, Ms. Adams, either Aaron or Susan, do either of you have questions for either of the 2 witnesses that you've heard so far this evening in terms of cross-examination?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So if you would like to come up to the podium, and you can go ahead and ask your questions. You'll present your case separately, so I'll ask you to only offer what you would have as questions specific to the testimony that's been offered. Because if your case outlines your side of the story, that's a separate part of this hearing.
Okay. Okay, so chronological order, I suppose I will go back to September, to the incident with the 2-year-old.
Are we're supposed to ask them questions, do we have questions?
Well, right, so within cross-examination, if you have a direct question for either witness,
Okay.
that you would like them to clarify their testimony, you can ask that question at this point. So
Okay.
you're not presenting your own case, but you are asking for clarification on items that you've heard, if any.
Okay, let's take a look here.
Because after this opportunity, then, if you don't have any clarifying questions for their testimony, we'll take your case.
I have one question. I don't remember after this incident after my husband's memorial service, it was never determined and it was never
Discussed.
discussed with
With
either
us.
one of us that Ms. McBride felt that it was a bite to his ankle. And we have someone who was also with us at that particular location that doesn't remember any growling. We don't remember anybody calling anybody an SOB.
Nope.
We never.
We looked-
Nothing
Well,
was
and
discussed.
that all is part of your case. So do you have any question that only clarifies her testimony?
Okay. One question I have regarding the claim of the incident with Mr. McBride.
Well, we've decided not to take testimony from Mr. McBride, so his incident is only relevant as it's referenced in the police report as prior history.
Okay, and I do have a question regarding that.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question regarding that, excuse me, is, first of all, neither one of us witnessed the bite occur. When I went outside to get the dog and saw him on the driveway, that is when Tanner indicated that he had been bitten. When I returned Hank to the house, my mother came out and we asked him, we wanted to see the bite, and he refused to show it to us. And we also said, he is already involved in obedience training, and it would be very helpful if you could tell us more specific information, where were you, where was he, what happened, so that we can share this with the trainer and, be able to get the best advice possible to prevent something like this from happening again. And he absolutely refused to discuss it with my mother or myself.
Okay, thank you. So no additional clarifying questions then for either witness?
No.
Nope.
Okay, so then with that, our attorney and the committee does not have any additional questions for them as well. And so as far as testimony, Aaron and Susan, which one of you would like to testify first? You can come up and offer your testimony, and if the committee has questions, we'll call for those questions then.
Sure.
Whichever one of you wishes to go first.
Okay, I guess we may as well go together, because there were some things that...
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, so if we're going to go in chronological order, if you are making reference to the incident in September with the 2-year-old, as she indicated, it was after my father's celebration of life. Several of us returned to the home, my mother's home. We had a fire in the backyard. Mrs. McBride was sitting to my left. My witness, Kate, was kind of across from us, but had full view of the area in front of Mrs. McBride and myself. I had Hank on his leash. He was sitting on my feet. And all of a sudden, there was no growling. We have 3 dogs in our family. Anybody hears a growl, we're investigating, because that's not normal. And all of a sudden, we heard the child crying. He was approaching both Mrs. McBride and I from behind. And when we jumped up to see what was wrong, Hank actually had to get up and move because he was sitting on my feet. I handed him off, and we went into the house with him and looked. All he could say was my foot. That's all he was able to say was my foot. And we looked at it. It looked like it was a single scratch along the side of his foot. And I actually had something similar at the time. several of our dogs had just had their nails done. So I had a similar looking scratch at the time. But at that point, we agreed it was a scratch. Nothing more was said about it. If she ever made a determination, or she never ever came back to me at a later time and said, you know, I got more information from the child, or even if she would have said, you know what, I just have a gut feeling as a mother that this is what happened, because if that would have been the case, we would not have had him around their children ever again. But it was never ever discussed after that.
Okay.
So, okay, keep going.
And despite this, they continue to allow the children on our property when Hank was present.
And was that interaction invited or uninvited?
So,
This, at that point when they were on our property, it was a celebration. They were invited guests at that time.
but oftentimes it is uninvited. Oftentimes it is uninvited. It's just, the kids are always in my yard. And sometimes Samantha's present, sometimes she is not.
Beyond the strip of grass that's
Oh,
shared
yeah.
between you?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And
They're-
the request,
Pardon?
that they stay out of the yard?
Yeah, and, you know, a lot of, whenever my dog is out, I have asked that Samantha keep the children out of the yard because Shirley is new to my family also, only a year. And I'm still feeling my way through what kind of dog she is. She came to me as a 2-year-old. So I'm never certain, and I don't want to have a problem. And even with the daycare children, she has one little girl that continually wanders in my yard if my dog is out, with me out there or not. And she comes over, as do the boys. The boys drive their four-wheelers and their little battery-operated toys all over my yard, all over the neighborhood. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay. So then, following into November of 2021, the incident with Mr. McBride, I had let Hank outside. It was dark. It was late, so we assumed, from what I could tell, it seemed like they were all in for the night. And we had never had any issues with him being outside before. When I came back to let him in, he was standing on the driveway with Mr. McBride. That's when he informed me that he had bit him. While I was returning Hank to the house, my mother came out. And as I was walking away with Hank, I heard her, asking to see the bite. I heard him say no. And then I also heard him telling his wife that he had kicked him. And at the time, I guess, it didn't really gel at that point. But after the fact, considering he would not show us the bite and considering he would not share any further details of what happened, I had to kind of wonder if what came first, the kick or the bite. And regardless, after that, to make sure that we never had an issue like that again, that cable was removed and all of our dogs were outside with supervision after that, whether at her house or my house.
So at this point, the leash was attached to the house, but it wasn't like a walking leash or anything that you would walk them on, right? It's like a rope you just put them
Cable.
outside on?
A cable.
Cable. What was the length on the cable?
That one is 10 feet. Which did go into their driveway. My previous dog, she used to go out on that, and sometimes she would lay in the driveway, but she was kind of old, she was real mellow. That was never an issue. And so we, not intentionally, but you kind of forget to move things or change things when you get a new dog, and that was one of the things that we should have removed right away.
Okay, so that cable did extend across the property line, though, into the McBride yard?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Yes, it did. And we took care of it immediately.
okay. And you said from that point you were using walking leashes and not cables?
We do have another cable that is further back in the yard, further away from their property that
backyard?
that cannot reach their property. And we usually use that one for my coonhound
And my dog.
and your dog.
And that's a separate dog, that's not Hank?
No. We have 3 dogs between the 2 of us.
So you have 2 and Susan has 1,
Correct.
but you don't reside at Susan's address?
No, I do
So
not.
these other 2 are visitors?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Okay. And again, after what happened in November, once again, would like to point out, they continued to come into our yard and onto my mother's property uninvited, whether I was present or not.
When, they knew when she was here, and they knew that having bitten Tanner, you would have thought that she would have kept her kids in their yard. But that didn't seem to happen. That didn't seem to happen.
When was the cable that reached across the property line removed? After this bite that happened in June?
No, back in November.
So when these subsequent events happened, that the dog was on a walking lead at that point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So we're up to the 17th of June, when the incident occurred to the oldest boy. Erin had come for her visit, and I was sitting in one of my chairs. I had a set of 2 chairs on my sidewalk, which faced their driveway, and she had just taken the dog out to do his business, and Admiral was in the back, and Shirley was on another hook, but they were both on the sidewalk. And the boys had been told, because when they came home, they were running around like crazy in that small area, and we had all 3 told them, get away from the dogs.
Take your toys.
Take your toys, please get away from the dogs.
Go play in your own yard.
And I believe Sam said, go play in your own yard. Well, it was only a couple minutes after that Caden came running back, and when she said he fell at my feet, he did. Literally at my feet. And I did not have to pull the dog off of him, because initially I thought he had tripped and fallen. He was coming so fast, straight at me and straight at where Hank was sitting right next to me.
He came out of the dog's periphery.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even, with where I was sitting, I didn't
Right.
even see him coming until he hit the ground in front of my
Right.
mother. And we both thought that he had initially tripped and fallen.
Thought he had fallen, and I was more concerned because I have a sidewalk there, and there's a little bit of a
Edge.
it's my sidewalk, and there's a little bit of an edge, and I was so afraid he had caught himself or clocked himself on that sidewalk area. Well, when it was determined that he was bitten, because I thought, like I said, initially I thought he fell. And then when she picked him up and he was on her lap, and I realized he was bitten, that's when I yanked the dog by the neck, because I wanted to get it in the house, because it was chaotic. It was very chaotic. The dog did not have to be pulled off of him. He did not attach. It was a bite, and because Caden was running so fast and fell headlong, that's, I think, what caused a little bit of the scraping. I mean, he did get him, but, it was a situation where
You didn't see him.
I couldn't have gone anywhere with the dog, because he was right there. He was right there, running around.
And the reason my mother was holding his leash, when I brought him outside to do his business, the boys were running around. I did not even step off the porch with Hank until the boys had left the area with their toys. That's when I came down. He did his thing. I went back up on the porch, and I was going to put him in the house. And my mom said, oh, hey, they said, hey, pull up a chair. And so that's when I handed Hank to my mother. and she was also holding their youngest child on her right knee. And so when I handed Hank to her, she had him on the leash, but practically down by his collar, because he was kissing the baby's feet and legs, and he was wanting to crawl on her lap to, lick the baby's face, which I've never allowed any of our dogs to do. So that's why she had him as tightly as she did. And then along came Caden.
Okay. With regard to the testimony offered by Humane Officer Bishop with her conversation with your veterinarian, have you commented to the veterinarian in the past about bite behavior from this dog?
The only discussion I had was back in March, and this was after he'd already completed obedience training. And so when he went in for his regular appointment in March, the tech asked me, as they were checking us in, is there any ongoing issues, concerns, anything you want to speak to the doctor about? And I said, well, yes, two things. Pretty much ever since he was adopted, he's had some issues with, he drinks an abnormally large amount of water, and of course then that results in him having to urinate quite frequently. And that is something that our vet has worked him up for. I had him in Appleton for this as well last May. Weren't coming up with anything. Based on this appointment, we kind of started taking another look at things, ran some additional labs at some different times, and then our vet had consulted with another internal medicine doctor in Appleton regarding his case and said, well, yeah, we got some new information. We could be looking at diabetes insipidus, and she had recommended that we start treating him as such to see if there was an improvement in his symptoms. The other thing I mentioned on the appointment in March is I said, he has completed his obedience training, but I said, when we are out walking, I said, if anybody tries to approach us, I said, particularly men, it's anybody, but I said, particularly men, and it's even worse if it's dark. I said, he goes on the defensive, and I said, we're working with him on this. I said, but if there's anything else that you can suggest, because I said, I don't want anyone to get hurt. When this happens, I will obviously immediately warn the person and say, because of course they want to pet the dog. And I say, well, I'm sorry, he really is very wary and very not trusting of anybody that he does not already know and trust. So please refrain from trying to pet him. But I have had some individuals that do not heed that, and they continue trying to approach him. And
What's his behavior been like with those people?
well, when anyone approaches, he's automatically suspicious. He'll growl. He'll warn them. He'll growl. If it's very obvious that they're going to continue approaching him, he will bark. But if they get close enough, if they're close enough, then, he will try to go after their feet or ankles. But again, this is not usually after I've said, hey, please stay away.
Okay. When was the obedience training?
Pardon me?
When was the obedience training?
First class was October 19th of 2021, and it completed on November 30th, and I have his certificate of completion with me.
And we have since been in touch with the gentleman who did the training, just to see if there's anything else that she could do, or any
additional training, any additional recommendations.
Right. And he said that we just have to keep reinforcing what he was already taught, which has been done.
Mm-hmm. And so when this behavior happens, this aggressive, I guess I'd say aggressive posturing toward people that are approaching you, based on the obedience training, and when this starts, or when you can see this is maybe imminent, what action do you take with the animal?
Well, my first order, right, he gets a correction as we were taught in obedience class. Second thing
what's the correction?
They do wear pinch collars anytime. Actually, all three of our dogs, when they're out walking, wear pinch collars, and so it is snapped so that they get a pinch on the neck to indicate that, hey, we don't want you doing that.
And the command is leave it.
Right. And At that point, if it's still going on and they're still approaching,
We move over.
yeah, that's the next order of business is distance. So if it means I've got to go onto someone's driveway, the boulevard, someone's yard, I've moved into the street with them if necessary, but whatever has to happen to keep distance so that there cannot be any chance that there's going to be contact.
But he is responding very well to the leave it.
Yes, he is.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Sure.
It says in this report that we have in front of us that Hank also has 2 bites in Marshfield.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect?
That is incorrect. There are no reports of anything in Marshfield, and I actually spoke with the Marshfield PD this morning, and they confirmed the same.
How long have you owned Hank?
Hank was adopted on February 6th, 2021, so probably a year and a half.
So are these Marshfield incidents alleged during your ownership or someone else's? Did you adopt him over there?
No, he was fostered in Sheboygan, but he originally came up from Texas. We've adopted from the same rescue since 2007. So Hank would be, I think, our 5th with our whole family. He's our 5th. We've a total of 6 dogs from the same rescue. Hank would be number 5, and my mom's dog Shirley would be number 6.
And when you say that he has no reported bites in Marshfield, are there unreported bites that you're aware of?
It would be news to me.
Okay. Just
It would
because
be-
we've been talking about reported and
right.
unreported here.
And if I can clarify something, the officer that spoke with me after, I can't say his name, can I? Well, after the bite on June 17th, he said that in his report that I supposedly confirmed a incident in Marshfield. And what I was not really confirming, I said she did have an incident where someone got out of a vehicle. Well, it turned out it was a dog that is down the street from her that jumped out of their vehicle because she was walking her 2 dogs and ran
Across the
across the
road.
street. There was no bites involved. It was just one of those things where dogs want to be dogs.
And I have a couple other questions.
Sure.
For the training that he underwent, what, I guess, did it all entail? Is it one of those that the dog goes away for 6 weeks and you don't see him, or it's an
No.
hour-long class and then you have to work with them and then you come back the next week?
It's an
Right.
hour-long class.
Yeah, well, an hour and a half-ish.
For 7
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
8
Sorry,
weeks.
8 weeks.
Okay. How often is Hank in Wasa?
Well, a lot of times that depends on my work schedule and if we've got family events or whatnot, but I guess I would say at a minimum, probably once a month, at a maximum, twice a month, at most.
And during COVID, he wasn't here at all.
Correct.
And when he does come, how long is he here?
Not usually longer than a weekend.
Okay. So you bring him like Friday night and leave Sunday?
Right.
Correct.
Typically, I mean, or it might be a Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Okay.
And I would say she probably visits more frequently since my husband passed last year.
With regard to the dangerous dog declaration, they did indicate that they were not going to impose a requirement for outdoor kennels, et cetera, because obviously it's not Susan's dog.
Sure.
But when visiting, he would be asked to leash, muzzle, and you would need to carry that special dog insurance.
Correct.
I guess, what is your opposition with those 3 caveats? Clearly, that keeps everyone safe, including passerbys and not just the McBride children. So, you haven't been asked, the full complement of things that can be mandated is a lot. And it's a lot of work and it's not cheap, but you're not getting that full list of things to do. So I guess, where do you take issue with the 3 items that you would be asked to do?
Well, I guess my big thing is that at this point, this seems to be the only place where we've had difficulty is here and with this particular family. We walk all over my mother's neighborhood. We have never had any other incidents or any other problems. So at this point, I feel.
But you just testified when you're out walking with him that if people approach and it's dark, or that those are people that he doesn't know, that he already starts. Like, there's already a posture that you have reason to be concerned about what comes next. So it isn't just their family, right? So,
No, I meant in terms of concern with biting. We've not had any other instances anywhere else in my mother's neighborhood where he's bitten somebody, or even come close to biting anybody.
Or even acted like
but
that.
as a dog
Right.
owner, knowing what has already taken place and the fact that you've gone through this complement of behavioral classes with him, knowing that that posturing is still taking place, as a dog owner, would it not be in your best interest really to take steps to keep people safe if you're going to be out and about? I mean, if you're going to pass someone on a street or pass someone on a sidewalk, and that dog is able to get its mouth open and get it around someone, that really is what these caveats in this declaration are intended to prevent. So I guess I'm curious what your aversion is to those requirements.
Well, I will be honest, I don't feel that, a muzzle, leash is no big deal. He's on a leash anyway. As far as him being muzzled, I actually remember discussing this with our trainer at one point. I asked him if, should we use something like a muzzle? I think we also discussed bark collars with him, or shot collars, something like that. And he had indicated, and he said no. He said neither one of them is teaching the dog anything. But if we needed to do that, I would not object.
Because that really is the impetus of the request, is that by designating the dog as dangerous, it requires those things to happen. The insurance, the leash, and the muzzle. It doesn't require the installation of the outdoor kennel and the posting of signs and the other things that are listed in that ordinance. So if you already are willing to comply with those caveats, I guess what are we really appealing then? I mean, they didn't give you the full list of to-dos, I guess.
Well, I guess our other issue for appeal here is, we feel that this incident on the 17th and, any others, I want to say, is Hank was provoked. These people were told to leave our property. They were told why. And I guess to me, if all these other things had taken place, why did you keep coming back to our property? Why did you keep coming back when you knew that our dog was there? We have a right to be out and enjoying our yard as well. We don't ever take our dogs onto their property. They are constantly invading our yard and our property.
Thank you for that. Additional questions, Nate?
Yeah, I have. For the almost bite to Miss McBride, she couldn't remember who was present, but I think maybe it was Aaron. Do you recall this incident at all?
No.
Okay.
No.
In fact, when I first got the report and I saw that, I thought,
We
what are we talking about?
We didn't know what she was talking about. And the other thing is, she also indicates in here that there was a social gathering at my mother's home in June or July of last year where somebody was bitten on the leg. I was not even in Wasa on the whole month of June because my parents were in Marshfield the first weekend in June. In fact, that's the last time I ever got to see and speak to my father alive. After that, he was in the hospital. The reason I didn't come to Wasa is because with the COVID restrictions at the hospital, I couldn't even go in to see him anyway. I kept saying, anytime I got an update, I said, Mom, do you want me to come home? Do you need me to come home? And she said, there's no point, that you can't go in and see him anyway. Okay. And then as far as July, I did not show up until July 15th, and that was the day that my father went into critical care.
Of 2021.
Correct.
2021. And he was in critical care for 2 weeks until he passed.
Okay. Additional questions?
No.
Committee members, any additional questions? Go ahead, Doug.
I have a question. Dog is a part blue heeler, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and if I understand right, that's a herding animal, and potentially hardwired to herd animals, nipping at ankles, things like that. Has anyone opined from the vet or from obedience training or from our PD that on the characteristics of this particular breed for this type of behavior?
I'm sorry, what about the behavior?
Is the behavior typical of the breed, I think is what he's asking.
Correct.
The herding is, I believe.
Yes.
I believe, yeah.
So it's common, and I guess the other question is knowing that he's a rescue, was his initial upbringing in the state of Texas, was he engaged in any activity where he was involved in herding or tending of livestock?
To the best of our knowledge, no.
So he was a family pet there as well?
Correct.
Right. He was one of 6 dogs.
And they had to give up 3. That's what we heard.
Okay,
That was the story.
okay. Anyone else have additional questions at all?
Just one more.
Go ahead, Nate.
Certainly.
Any report of abuse before you adopted him and the previous families?
We don't know for sure, but based on how fearful he is and how easily startled he is, we have reason to believe that he was mistreated.
And he will not go up steps.
Okay.
He does not go up steps. Scared to death.
And I do also want to add that we do not hit our animals.
Yeah. I think it was intimated that somebody smacked him in the face, and we don't do that. I've had to with Shirley a time or two, just because she gets sassy, but
Okay.
that's my dog.
Okay, anybody have additional questions for either of the homeowner or the dog owner? If not, you guys can go ahead and be seated. And you had brought an extra witness with you. Does that witness have testimony to offer other than what you've already given us?
She can confirm what we already told you.
Right.
Okay, about the incident of June 17th?
No.
No, this would be about
September.
the 2-year-old's incident.
Okay. Committee, do you wish to accept the testimony that you've already heard regarding the September incident, or do you want to hear from the other witness? If you're, okay, I think the committee is good. We'll
Okay.
kind of move things along.
Okay.
Okay,
If it's okay, there are 2 other things I would like to point out regarding kind of just overall behavior. After the incident on the 17th, the very next morning, my mother had her dog out in the yard. And why don't you tell them what you saw?
The little boy that had been bit the day before, the night before, he was teasing Shirley, and she headbutted him because he was getting down really close and getting really close to her, and I said, Caden, you just better pick up that thing and get out of here, because he was in our yard because Shirley was tied to the tree, which is in the middle of my backyard.
okay,
So,
okay.
And I also want to mention that prior to this incident occurring, and actually even before I returned to Wasa on the 17th, my mother had made me aware. She said, by the way, on Sunday the 19th, Father's Day, she said the McBrides had asked if we would watch all 3 of the boys so that they could go motorcycle riding. And I said, okay. So when Sunday rolled around, we were outside. They were getting ready to go on their ride, and the boys had been. There were pallets of patio stones on the driveway for a home project, and all weekend long, these kids had been climbing on these pallets and these bricks, and both parents had, numerous times told them not to be doing that, and. At one point, Mrs. McBride said, Caden, if you don't listen to me and get down from there right now, I'm going to go get Hank, and I'm going to let him bite you again.
Okay.
and I do have a text whereby Samantha, I could read it, but basically it says that the boys have not been listening, and they are virtually defiant. And that's when Tanner said, they have no boundaries. They're supposed to, now they are staying in their yard in the fenced-in area. They need to learn to do that. But there's probably a few more points in there that do indicate that they can be out of control, and they get out of control in my yard when I don't want them there.
Okay. Thank you for that. Additional questions? If not, you guys can go ahead and have a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any additional questions for any of the witnesses that we've heard from? Officer Bishop, if you would like to come back up.
Yeah, she has the ability to cross-examine.
She does. So, yes, so if there's any cross-examination that you would like to undertake since they had the opportunity on your case? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them here, but first I'd like to hear from Aaron, because we heard from Susan regarding the issue, the incident in Marshfield. However, Susan, to my understanding, was not there. So I would like to hear from Aaron, the situation in Marshfield, which may have involved another dog, or please explain that. Sure.
The only incident in Marshfield that I know of is, and I don't know if this was last summer or perhaps even this spring, we were walking down the street with both my dogs and a neighbor across the street. I don't know if they were coming home or if they were getting ready to go somewhere, but they had their small dog in the car with them, and when their dog spotted us, he snuck out of the car and he ran all the way across the street and wanted to obviously pick a fight with my two dogs. Fortunately, we were able to keep enough distance between everybody, and the owner was hot on his heels and retrieved him. No dogs were injured, no people were injured, and everybody just went on with their lives.
So was that dog coming across the street with an aggressive posture, or was it coming to greet?
No, he was growling.
Okay. Okay. Additional questions?
With regards to your statement on the situation with Tanner, where you were concerned that he potentially kicked the dog, if you thought that that was a situation that was happening, why did you allow Tanner to then continue, because that was in November, to be around Hank?
Tanner really has not been around Hank since then. He will be on their property, but usually when our property is being invaded, it's typically the children and Mrs. McBride.
Okay.
And then my final question is, after the bite to the 5-year-old on June 17th, what was Hank's behavior? Was he barking? Was he growling? What was he doing?
Hank was not doing anything. Hank was sitting next to my mother, and he was licking the feet of the 5-year-old's smaller brother. There was no growling. There was no snarling. He came out of his periphery. I mean, he didn't have time really to do anything other than, react. And after, like I said, when the child fell at my mother's feet, Hank was sitting right next to my mother, not making a sound.
Okay.
But after the bite?
After the bite, when the child fell at my mother's feet, his feet and ankles were right in front of Hank. So if all he was looking to do was keep biting, he had the perfect opportunity, and he did not.
Okay. Additional questions?
I have one.
Okay.
One, and I guess I had asked this of Officer Bishop initially. Why was I never contacted for any information regarding this? The first individual, the first official I heard from regarding this incident was when I received a call from the Marathon County Health Department. I never received any contact from the Wausau PD until I reached out to her after the declaration was made. And her call to my vet was also after the declaration had been made.
Okay. The call to the vet was likely in preparation for the hearing, so regardless of a date on that, I guess I don't know that the committee would be particularly concerned about her evidence gathering. Anything additional, committee members, that you have a question about? Go ahead, Doug.
I don't know if it's relevant per se, but do the McBrides own a dog?
Yes, they own two, and they are often also invading our yard.
Okay. All right. Committee members, any additional questions? If not, we have had all of the testimony from all of the witnesses, so at this point, we can move into closed session for our deliberation. Would someone like to read the closed session motion that's posted on the agenda? Do we have a volunteer to read the closed session wording? It's item number 4 on the agenda, now that everyone's iPads have gone to sleep.
No, mine was up.
Okay,
I just-
go ahead, Lou, thank you.
Closed for session is, closed session pursuant to section 19.85/1A of Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of considering the following: deliberating concerning a case in which the subject of any judicial, quasi-judicial trial or hearing before the government body reconvene into open session.
Oh, you can skip that part. Okay,
Okay.
so we have a motion to enter into closed session for the purpose of deliberation. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Denny. We'll do a roll call vote on closed session. Larson?
Aye.
Hanky?
Aye.
Denny?
Aye.
I'll vote aye as well. We'll adjourn to the Maple Room to do our deliberation, and we'll return to this chamber where we'll read the findings of fact and conclusion of law with regard to this hearing.